Good morning, this is Terry Doherty, and I'm here at the Mom's Choice Awards Filming Studio at Book Expo 2012, and I'm here with award-winning author Virginia Breen, who's the co-author of the award-winning book, I Am In Here. Co-author, who's the other author in your story?
She's my 14-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, and she is actually really the lead author. It's her poetry which is the center of the book, and I've written stories around them. You see, Elizabeth has autism and she can't speak, but she's learned how to type, and with that we've sort of gotten a view into the world of what it's like to live with a body that you don't control.
Now, when we were talking off camera, you said something that Elizabeth described it as her
silent cage.
Silent cage. I couldn't remember the first part.
Silent cage. She
Yes.
says, please free me from my silent cage. And we actually have worked very hard with biomedical and educational interventions since she was a little girl to free her. And for us, I think a big purpose of the book is to speak to educators and the medical community about the title, which is I Am In Here. We have now 1 million people in America that live with autism. It's a medical condition, and that we can treat it. And so Elizabeth has underlying medical conditions that include an inflamed immune system and a dysfunctional digestive system. These are all things that we can treat, and she and people with autism often can get better and even recover from this condition.
Now, I was speaking with somebody earlier, and we were talking about the idea of invisible disorders. And in your daughter's case, it's quite visible,
yes,
because she cannot communicate.
Yes.
For others with autism, it's, oh, well, they're normal. That's not autism.
That's right.
How does the book speak to those on the spectrum? Because autism is a spectrum disorder.
Absolutely. And in fact, Elizabeth's older brother, Charles, he's 16. He also has autism, and he speaks and has very different issues. So even within our own family, we see the spectrum of autism. And I think that the book is really one of hope and joy in the journey. I mean, we're all handed some kind of challenge in life, unless you are extraordinarily lucky.
And even then.
And even then. And so it really is that Elizabeth has been handed this challenge of not being able to speak. And in fact, she did speak. She spoke up until she was 15 months old, and then she suddenly could not speak after her 15-month vaccinations. And so this is not a book about vaccinations, it's a book about how when something happens, and for her it's a medical condition, for her brother it's a medical condition, how do you, as a parent, really gird yourself up? I mean, after you have a good cry, and you gird yourself up and you move forward. So one of these little paradigms we have in the book, it's called Why People and How People. So Elizabeth has taught me so many things, including that the world generally divides itself between why people and how people, and everyone has that choice. And the why people look backward and say, why me? Whatever it is that is befallen them. And how people, like Elizabeth, and like a lot of the other stories we tell in the book, are people who move forward no matter what life has handed them.
You talk about hope and joy. Are there special stories in audiences that you've reached that you never even imagined would find such joy as you have in writing this book with Elizabeth?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had deep relationships with people whom I've never met. And a lot of it is this wonderful global world we live in virtually on the internet. And
True.
So parents, I think it's a beautiful, powerful thing that you can join together and find these groups who say we're all dealing with a similar big challenge. And for us, again, it's autism, and say that we are going to learn from each other and help each other. And then every once in a while, we just came back from presenting, a matter of fact, at the large autism conference in Chicago, and Elizabeth and I talked about our journey, and we had parents coming up and hugging us because, again, they were people who we had never met, but they knew who we were, and so it was a real love-in, and that's what I think it is when you share suffering with somebody, that you say, I'm going to try my best to help you in what you're dealing with, and you're going to help me. And so that's what we try to do.
And it's absolutely wonderful when you're talking about, not in this situation, it's just us, obviously, because we're talking. But for Elizabeth to be able to participate in a conference and have the power of that joy come back to her.
That's right.
How does that make you feel as a mom?
Well, it was fantastic. And we are so thankful that we found a way for her to communicate, which is that when she was 6 years old, we found a woman named Soma Mukhopadhyay. She is in Austin, Texas, and she taught her own son, Tito, how to communicate first on a letterboard and then later on an iPad and a computer. And so Elizabeth is completely independent in her typing, and she learned from this woman who has now since taught thousands of people, adults and children, how to communicate. And so one thing that we really want the book to do is to take a parent and say, you may not have known that there was something that you could do to help your child to be able to break out and to communicate. And that is such a gift. We are incredibly thankful to Soma. And so Elizabeth, in fact, had conversations with people on her iPad at this conference, and it would never have happened without that connection.
That's absolutely wonderful. Now, you mentioned that this is a book of poetry. Do you have a favorite poem that you might like to read with us?
Oh, I would love to. I'd love to read the one that is the title of the book, I Am In Here. So Elizabeth had just seen a speech expert. She was 9 years old, and the speech expert said in front of her, maybe she just doesn't want to talk. Now, it broke my heart, but Elizabeth instead wrote this poem. I sometimes fear that people cannot understand that I hear. And I know that they don't believe I go to every extreme to try to express my need to talk. If only they could walk in my shoes, they would share my news. I am in here and trying to speak every day in some kind of way.
It's absolutely beautiful. What a wonderful way. Oh, you just touched my heart. What a wonderful way to finish our interview. Congratulations on your award-winning book, and I'm so glad you were able to join us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Virginia.
All right.